okay, it's on. We're live, and whatever
Okay.
you say might be used against you.
Yeah. Whatever you whatever you eat might be used
Whatever
again.
you
No.
eat, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Am I supposed to like do the
There's
thing?
there's there's a nice song by Genesis, the old Genesis with Peter Gabriel, and
Uh-huh.
it's something like, "Young man said you, young man says you are what you eat. Eat well. Old man
Oh, okay.
says, old man says you are what you wear. Wear well." So
I thought he was gonna say like uh young men say you are what you eat. Eat sandwiches. But but I guess not.
I guess I'm a sandwich right now.
Yeah.
Yours.
Well, can be nice to be a
I think I
sandwich.
think a sandwich
Certain
sandwich is quite a good
circumstances.
quite a good starting point of
Oh wait,
talking
that
about
sounds uh,
archviz and all the layers of it.
yeah,
You have the meat, the meat,
sandwich
Yeah,
visualization.
some
bread.
butter,
how, how
bread,
Yeah.
to
yeah,
organize your
daily
layers.
bread.
How to organize it. What blending
A
mode do you
sandwich.
use for your lettuce?
Bread is walls. It's modeling walls and floor. And ketchup
Oh,
is the add-ons.
Ketchup.
yeah, that's true.
There's ketchup.
Ketchup and
Ketchup.
yeah,
Okay.
and the rendering engine is the toaster. Okay, so here we are again at another. I'm having another conversation about CG, and well, I would say ArcViz, but this is something that's applicable to everything, I think. So let's just say we're gonna be talking about style, all of the all of the little nuances of it, and what that even really means. So um, I think it might be good as always to kind of do a round of introductions among the three of you, kind of just so new listeners can get to know you guys better and your backgrounds. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I can start. My name is Michał, also known as Andrew on the farm, and my background is architecture, working in architectural offices and architectural visualization. So this is my experience in CG and where I come from.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think I can go next because I'm Tom. Because basically I have like the same background in architecture and archviz. I went from architecture to archviz, like freelancing in archviz. So basically, we have like the same background.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I can go next and surprise everyone about my background. I came from architectural background, but the interior, generally interior design. So
Juicy.
yeah, so it's quite the same, but just from the other side, from
Yeah.
inside out, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I guess that's kind of like, I guess most people in archviz have this kind of route, at least from my experience.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's kind of like you start designing something and you need to visualize it, so you become your own archviz artist, and maybe perhaps then become somebody else's as well, or you work in a bigger company. uh,
Right.
I myself had this kind of way that I made my own designs, and yeah, worked a little bit in the field of interior design practically, and then leaned towards archviz more. Yeah, was more and more interested in computer graphics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I had
Cool.
also different other experiences like graphic design and stuff.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's a good sort of segue in into the first question, I guess, which is, do each of you guys feel that you've over the years developed your own personal style, and whether you have or haven't, like how would you sort of describe your like your work? I mean, I realize a lot of like projects involve working under very tight briefs, maybe even just kind of copying references to the to the dot. But does that yeah, do you feel like you're able to kind of inject your sort of your own personal um, flavor to it, or at least kind of uh, get to the final deliverable with sort of a bit of your your taste kind of showing through somewhere?
Well, I think it's like you always like have to fight with the briefs, because if you get a brief from a client, you have to like well include everything that your client wants to do. But I think, well, if you think about it, you always have this kind of way, or kind of somehow you can implement your own visions into the final product, like the final visualization. And I think even if you have like a really detailed brief from a client, you can somehow, basically you are the creator of the final product, so you have to somehow have your own vision. I think like every project you do is somehow influenced by your style. I mean, like your personal style. I think somehow along the way you develop your own style, even if you like have to follow every brief. But then again, you have like these, you can do these personal projects like in the meantime somehow, and then these I think like are the best to develop your own kind of own looks and own style in archviz.
I might say that it's also like a kind of a process along the way. So you're probably, yeah, generally every person has a kind of like something that he likes or not, preferences, personal preferences in style, in as it comes to design, to the looks of things, and I don't know, color preferences, other stuff, and you even subconsciously apply that to your work.
Yeah.
And that also kind of like goes back to the thing that we talked about in the previous episodes about portfolios. Is when you put a portfolio and gradually add more work to it, it kind of like guides you in some way. So probably you focusing on specific, like specific looks and specific styles. You probably also like you tend to attract specific clients, and yeah, it's kind of like a feedback process that you apply your style and it comes back to you by getting focusing on this like branch or area, because there are many shades of this. Maybe I'm not putting that clearly, but I guess
no.
It's kind of like, and it's an ongoing process, so it's always changing. Yeah, you are changing as well along the way, so you learn new things. You look at things in a different way after a few projects. Seeing more, experiencing more.
Yes, that unconscious part is, I think, interesting, because some people committed to create their own style and to consciously work on having on a look of their works, and but I noticed that for me, I don't think I really had a very exceptional style which would be quickly recognized as my work. They were more or less like average visualizations, and maybe somebody would notice that, but I didn't think that I have some very specific style of doing that. but I noticed that I drew a lot when I studied architecture and before that, and I noticed that when it comes to hand drawing, the style appears instantly. It's you can take like a bunch of guys who really didn't draw before and give them pencils and ask to draw the same thing, and everyone will draw it different way. And after some time, if you look at the works, they had this style or this way of drawing a line, of seeing, I don't know, the construction of the object which they draw instantly. It's not something that you need to ask to people who are drawing with pencil to be aware of. It just happens. And I think that in drawing, it was very easy to develop that style. It was basically not possible to draw without your style. And in 3D, it's more difficult, I think, because this 3D software gives you constraints, and it's kind of pushes you into you are not totally free in the same way as drawing with your hand. And if you add on top of that, if you add some constraints when it comes to the subject, for example, you are doing architectural visualizations or interiors, this is another constraint. So so I think this is more difficult to create a really exceptional or really personal style using 3D programs than just drawing. And I remember when I studied architecture, we had some professor who at the first year, when those programs, visualization programs and CAD programs became popular already, some guys would come to the first exercise where they got some corrections and feedback from professor. They would come with projects, designs already made in 3D programs or CAD, but for example in 3D programs, and he would discard those designs because he said that those exact tools are going to force you to some exact actions or some exact way of thinking. You are going to look for the area in those programs which are giving you the most freedom. And if, for example, it's very easy in some program to create a box and some kind of material, you are going to think with those boxes and those materials because this is where you can play around. The other actions, for example, technically complicated, are going to take you much time, so you are not going to really play around in this part. So he insisted that at first we are going to just draw with our hands, and then when we have some idea, we can make it more detailed and show it by architectural visualization by program like 3ds Max and V-Ray. So yeah, so actually he made an experiment. He took a group of people and he actually told us one group to draw with hand, one group to come up with idea for design in work in 3ds Max or Blender or anything, one group in AutoCAD. And it was obvious when you looked at those works that the guys who use those programs usually came up with very similar ideas, because that was the easiest thing to do in this particular program. So I think it's more difficult to create your style, for example, especially in architectural visualization, than to have your own hand like your characteristic line in drawing with pencil or with ink. So I think it gets more. You need to have more talent and more commitment and more curiosity than just when, for example, you're just drawing to achieve something like that.
I guess I could drop in a thought here to what Andrew said. I like this very, very much because, well, I myself practice hand drawing as well, and yeah, try to like keep an eye on like these traditional artistic skills that I've learned in the academy when learning interior design and other stuff, and also photography. So photography is maybe a little bit more applicable in the 3D in the archviz industry, generally like one-to-one applicable. But then I've seen a nice podcast. I think it was a podcast or maybe a vlog on YouTube, guys talking about architecture and making portfolio reviews, and they were painting over other artists' work on a tablet, and just like quickly masking out things, painting over. Generally, matte painting is a technique to quickly like test different things on a visualization. So like using tools that are much more kind of like fast and intuitive, like drawing, to get the right composition effect, because like Andrew said, like these tools, complicated tools of photorealistic visualization, they tend to sometimes like take over your kind of creative juices, or you focus too much on technical details and get lost in them, and you lose that fresh, fast, iterative approach that is with hand sketching and maybe quickly modeling or sculpting in clay, whatever, to just quickly get what's on your mind and check it on a piece of paper or in 3D space, like with sculpture. And this is more about creativity and about quickly being able to quickly test different ideas. So just like Andrew said, and that is, I think, a good tool to apply to your archviz work. So like to take a step back and think over the whole work from a different perspective, not just like from a perspective of your DCC app and the render engine and all the settings, shaders and stuff like that, but looking at as a piece of artwork in general.
Yeah, I think those are like those kinds of limitations with the tools we use, because I think we somehow at some point stop thinking about what we want to do and are like somehow think how we want to do it in like a certain piece of software. And I think it's good what you're saying, that to take this kind of a step back and create like a piece of archviz and then somehow implement this kind of traditional artsy kind of style, and then see what you can do with these traditional tools without thinking about those, the archviz tools, the 3D software you use, or any kind of rendering engines.
Yeah, totally. And actually, it's a really that got meaty really fast, but that's great because yeah, I think that's also because I also draw and paint, and one thing I guess in a way that sort of frustrates me is, I mean, I like 3D as a medium, and I tend to sort of like move more. I'm more inclined to sort of organic things, but I'm not sure if this is something. Well, I think it also applies obviously to hard surface work, but especially in organic, if you drew a figure or you painted a figure, you get a lot of like there like Andrew mentioned, dogs. First of all, you get yeah. So first of all, you get you sort of there's your draftsmanship, right? Like there are people who are really good draftsmen, meaning like their strokes are very confident. They can draw straight lines, ellipses in one, one swoop, and they have control over line weight, like within one particular uh stroke, and that really translates into all of into like the foundation of the work. And then if you start like the choices you make in sort of articulating tonal values, like you might be more of like a pen and ink dude, or dudette, if they still say that these days. But you might be more of a pen and ink person. You might be more like into graphite. You might like to blend your tones. You might like to keep them very sharply delineated, and yeah, like all of these are. And then like you could be heavy-handed, or you could be, you could naturally be very light in your initial lines. And all of that, like it influences the look in a very, very big way. And of course, like as you get into paint and things like that, like depending on the medium, there are a lot of other variables that all kind of go back to the way you, I guess, I mean, of course that's not the only thing, right? But a lot, like the way you are with your hands kind of already is a big influence. And that's not, there's not much to say. I mean, that's saying nothing about like all of the other factors that come into play. And in 3D, you aren't actually, unless maybe you're sculpting, but even then, like there's sort of a middle element between your hand and the direct, like it's not like your hand, the pencil and the paper. It's your hand, the stylus, keyboard shortcuts, a bunch of operations, and then the result, or a mouse. I mean, there's always this middle step that kind of, in a way, controls like your your choices for you. And another
Yeah.
thing that was mentioned earlier was like, yeah, like of course, if you're used to doing things in a certain way, like let's say you've been using your 3D app for some time, you get, like you're used to a certain workflow that maybe influences your style, then a new one comes along, but like it would, like it might you might not necessarily adopt to it right away, because you're already working efficiently in your current workflow for some time at least. And that's all. I mean, so that's true. That's a very big issue. um well, it depends, yeah, but i think I think
But
that,
then
like,
when you think about it, because when you have like used 3D software, that's somehow
Mhm.
also like kind of a tool, like a tool of the
Yeah,
art.
yeah,
Mm.
I just mean
At
that
some
it's
point, I think
it's
what,
Mhm.
yeah, go on.
Oh, no, no, I mean
Yeah.
it's like I guess, yeah, like the first point I think is that, like, it's different when, like, it's really just your hand and then a paper, or your hand and clay. mm, because yeah, like like that already opens up a lot of very subjective, um like a lot of your characteristics kind of show through. I mean, you could even say that, let's say, people can, like forensic investigators can determine, can get like a psychological profile out of you through your handwriting, right? Or maybe psychologists, or whoever, hookup artists,
Well, yeah.
whoever.
And now the question is whether like forensics can like find you based on your like archviz style.
No, yeah, like, I
If
mean,
you
no, I
like
just
this
mean,
so much of
yeah,
a vivid style that you can,
yeah, yeah.
they can always find you by the style.
Yeah, like, ooh, I know that, no, no, I
Yeah.
mean, I just mean that, like, uh it's just like a lot of you can be described in just a few strokes with a pen or pencil, and that isn't as easily, like, evident in when you're working with computer related software. And I think even digital painting, like, if you tend to, like, use the lasso tool a lot to get clean silhouettes, or sort of like you just add fills to a lot of these things, and then you blend them over after, like like line confidence, for example. But anyway, but yeah, like, so uh that's something that's a very real thing, I guess. And I just wanted to kind of point out that, yeah, like I see that also in my own experiments. And but then again, the funny thing is, like, I also, another medium that seems to like have a lot of style, or like you can tell, like, the people kind of really celebrate, and like, that, there are many figures in, like photography, like photography, like there are a lot of like photographers who are noted, who are recognized for a particular look. And um it seems like it's yeah, like people are really, um like it has the same level of like, what's the word, like, it's just as much a medium as anything else. And yet, somehow, like there's a lot of conversation about like style in photography, but you're really just, like it's, you're not, um you're operating a camera. So what do you guys think about that? Like, how, like, is that something, like, why would photography, for example, be something uh that might, show more personal, like, identity than maybe a 3D render, if that's even true? What do you guys think about that?
In photography, it's about making a choice. So like you can be in the same room and make completely different photos than another person with a camera. So it's somewhere in you, and it just, that lamp gets turned on when you see this thing you feel is interesting, and then you make a photo. But for example, I know a guy who's a cinematographer, and he's a talented cinematographer and post-production artist. And I remember he studied photography at the University of Arts, and he struggled there because, and that was strange for me, because this is such a close field to cinematography. And he said, well, this is just not my language. This is just not my my channel of communication. Still images photographed. I need to have a camera and move around and shot moving objects and tell some story this way. So even in such a close field as photography, he felt that he didn't really got it. And by the way, I think that I, I can give example when I figure out something. I talked to a guy who is a mathematician, and and for me, mathematics is about just solving the task you get from the teacher. And so I asked him, why do you like mathematics? I mean, such a hard, such a hard field. And he said, well, because I feel that I'm free in mathematics. I can do whatever I want. And for me, it was very surprising, because what? So, I mean, I'm on the level of struggling to resolve the task I was given by the teacher, and you feel free. What can you do in mathematics? Like, from blank piece of paper, he feels free to do whatever he wants. It was just difficult to understand for me. But then I noticed that every time somebody is good in some field, or it's really it's his thing, that person would say, oh, I feel free in this area. And it doesn't mean that you are going to feel free in the same area. So yeah, so personally, when it comes to architectural visualization, I felt always very much constrained. I'm sure there are people who feel very free in this field, and they have potential to create their own style. I think most of people who do architectural visualization, at least in the past, maybe not now, because this is now there's a lot of new artists and on a fantastic level, but years ago there was a lot of like average production of archivists, probably even now. I just can't see it. I see the best works. So maybe actually that was the thing I want to ask you guys. In architectural visualization, what do you think is the area of freedom of looking for something interesting? Because for sure it's not modeling walls of the building. So where do you feel the most free when you work on the archivist, for example?
Well, I think when you compare like archviz to photography, like we talked before, I think in photography you kind of will picture the environment as like kind of you see that you have to observe, and then well you can't really like do anything with the environment. You can just shoot a really good shot through your camera. And I think with archviz you have this kind of freedom that you can like create your own environment. So I think this is like this kind of freedom you get, that you don't, kind of you're not really limited by the environment, that you can create your own environment and then will somehow sculpt the world like you want it to be. It doesn't have to be like one-to-one perfect and real looking.
Oh.
Well, I guess that well, I've heard an interesting talk about this by one of the top archviz agency CEO from my from the place where I live, and he said something like that archviz a few years back from now archviz was all about struggling for photorealism.
Yeah.
So like that was the ultimate task, like the holy grail of archviz at that time. But nowadays, he said that it already had changed, at least at the top level of the branch, that people are expecting more than just photorealism, and that is what we are talking really about, and that is style and sort of like conveying emotions. So like getting getting like some mood
telling
across,
a story,
telling a story, or giving an interesting artistic view on the space. And a very interesting thing that I've seen last week, it was posted somewhere on Facebook on one of the groups. I guess it was some kind of a prize for a competition, and I think it was on Architizer. It's a web page for architecture, architizer.com. There was announced winners of some kind of a international archviz awards, and most of the works that were that gained the prizes, they were really highly creative in approach to generally showing architecture. And it was both interiors and exteriors, with really like clever ways of picturing architecture. So it's about so this freedom is kind of like a little bit like with photography. You can just take a picture, and it can look plain, boring. You can just change the perspective on an object, change the lighting a little bit. Or maybe post produce a little bit, do some collage with photography, or to get some kind of your own expression out. So I guess that there still is a lot of place for style and personality. So it's kind of like it's always a struggle with. I think it's with every piece of art that you create, really. And maybe perhaps with archviz it's even harder because of this this kind of like how to call it, utilitarian purpose of the whole art. It's kind of like an art, but more like a craft,
Practical.
more like a craft to
Yeah,
get
but-
some things,
Yeah.
showcased in a
Has
nice
like a
way.
practical goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, it's you can do that, just make it to be okay, and just work, and that's fine. But you can go this 1 mile further and try to really do that with heart. And I guess that that is possible. Maybe not in all possible projects, but but I guess it's a thing worth pursuing. And I've seen that a lot of archviz artists are struggling towards that, and telling it's also about your own approach to the subject as well, I guess. Because so that comes to maybe what Tomasz has mentioned, your own personal project that you might want to make. And I've seen, like, one of my role models for archviz, for interior archviz, is making a lot of these like personal projects, and things that are maybe not like strictly commercial, commissioned projects, but making the visualizations for the sake of his love for architecture, for some tributes to his heroes, designers.
Because I think that's how you kind of develop your style, even if you're kind of a traditional artist, like you're a painter. And when you paint like commercially, you paint like portraits of rich people, you don't really have this kind of freedom, because you have this also kind of a brief you have to follow. But then if you pursue your personal project, I think that's this way and this medium where you can strongly develop your style. And I think this kind of also that's the
I
same
think
artist,
that's also kind of dependent on what kind of clients you are getting, or what kind of jobs you're landing. So
yeah,
or
that's
maybe
true. Yeah.
maybe as like a friendly counter argument, like portrait painters, for example, in like 15th 16th century, for like maybe, or maybe even all the way, I think even today, like the practice of sort of, like, in a way, they were sort of applying their own like manual Photoshop filters on their subjects, right? Like they would purposefully remove like you're
imperfections.
yeah, like you're painting the king, like the king or something, or the king's niece or whatever, and she has like this, or he has this, like, I don't know, like a big wart on his nose or something, and you kind of just don't paint that in,
Yeah.
or you put glitters on it, I don't know, but I think, but people are like, but then they see it, they're like, oh yeah, you really kept, because it helps kind of make it a little more marketable, and people kind of like keep hiring you for it. So what about that? Like, is there something maybe like would you say that maybe the way you handle like a render in post, or maybe certain like shader settings, maybe could you stylize those, like in CG, like, what do you guys think?
I think that you definitely can do that. It's not always it's not always expected from you to do that, but I've seen like this podcast that I mentioned, like all this vlog. They had some kind of like a motto: "Do it in post." So generally, like putting putting more focus on the post production, and getting the final image. Because that's sometimes hard way with the renderings, that raw renderings are very often coming out not the way you'd really want them to come out, but that's not that should not stop you there. You can always get something more out of an image. And I've been recently discovering this like almost by accident, because I've also had an experience of recording some tutorials, and I had to dig into editing video a little bit more, and learning new software for that, and came across the Vinci Resolve, which is primarily a color grading tool, and it's mostly used for cinematography. And it's kind of like giving me a slightly different look on an approach on what you can do with video footage, and as well as you can do that with still images, all the same. And it's kind of like a different look that people from cinema have on images generally. So looking at the mood, at the color palette.
Yeah, actually,
and really
I've
like
actually seen
changing the look of something to convey some emotions, to tell a story. Really, this is a kind of like a separate branch in cinematography, and it kind of like fits also into stylizing your archviz work. If you're not going for just for plainly showing a daylit interior to see just exactly the way it looks. But
interesting. I've also seen people actually like post-process the renders in Vinci Resolve because it has fusion in it, right? I've seen a few videos of people like import their
and some
passes
nice
there.
color grading tool. So you can do that as well in Blender. You can also have a compositor, so you can do a lot of things, similar things there. But I guess at least DaVinci has nice tools for that because it's a high-end color grading software inside.
We work at render farms, so I think everybody saw a lot of frames, which you could later see in the portfolio of our customers, and so does that. Like there's no so much magic in those renders as I would expect before I started working on the farm. So a lot of those things are just look very average, and everything happens in post-production. That wow effect, or however you call it. It's like renders. Those renders, in most cases, those renders are just like some middle product to a base to create an image. So
and that's kind of like similar as with the video footage, because I've been seeing for that color grading stuff. I've watched some tutorials from guys working with video. They tend to shoot with the camera, and they shoot as flat as possible in terms of color, stuff like that. So they get raw footage, and they like do that as flat as possible, as boring, let's say, as possible, just to have the freedom of post-production at the end.
Really?
So that they can
But
do everything in the color grading process.
What about lighting though? Does that eliminate like?
No, it's not about exposure. It's not exposure needs to be correct, so you get the raw files correctly exposed, and you get all the information there, but you just play the magic with the curves and all the color grades and
like a high dynamic range. What you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it's flat.
Recently, I saw an interview with a cinematographer who started much earlier before all those digital techniques, and he said exactly the same, that now his role is to give away a kind of milky image, which is going to be easy to work on in post-production. I mean, he still has to do his framing, his lighting, but he has to those low contrast images are good to work on, because in this higher contrast you cannot go down with high contrast so easily, but you can easily add contrast to those low those milky images.
Right.
But so you said you talked about post-production, which for me was a huge surprise when I went into archviz, that this is so important. And I never really I like drawing, but I really never found a way of post-production to really create some style. It was always kind of like shooting in the dark stuff. But what are the others? What are the others areas in, for example, let's say that we are talking about archviz. What are the other areas where you can show your own personal taste and your eye, and accept post-production, accept the colors in archviz? What do you think is another area of freedom where you can show your character?
Well, if I can hazard a guess, I would say, um, seeing as like you in the end, like you still control the virtual camera, for sure composition is a stylistic choice, right? Like you probably have freedom
It's super
to
powerful.
at least
Yeah.
frame your scene. And I guess you often may have, well, tell me if I'm wrong, yeah, but you might have also freedom to light it. Like if I mean for archviz, like I know interiors will probably have, you would probably have to light it based on the light emanating from like the windows or the internal light sources. But you could, I don't know, like use a sunset HDRI to cast a sort of, I don't know, golden glow that goes with the yellow of a particular accent in the room or something like that. Um,
You
I don't know,
basically can
like,
control everything, like all the lighting in archviz. So basically, you can
yeah,
take all the lighting you want and then like compose it into the shot. I mean,
yeah,
not
yeah.
for the
Oh,
shot itself or the composition, but like focusing on the lighting setup.
yeah. Sorry, I think I might. Sorry, I just want to kind of, since we're talking about this, I want to bring in a guest we had, like talk about this reminds me of a guest we had in one of our live streams. Mateusz Rabiega, I think. No, wait, what am I saying? No, sorry. That's
Uh,
that's our social
Really.
media
What
guy.
else really?
That's
Yeah. Sorry. So sorry, Matt. Sorry both, Matt. That's my bad. But
You can correct.
no,
You can correct this in post production.
yeah.
Stay calm.
You'll just hear like another audio clip of obviously like it being recorded in a different time of day in a different place. No, so yeah, we had so Mateusz was a guest, and one thing he did that was pretty interesting was, like, let's say like he had a scene that had some chairs in the foreground or the midground. It was like a living room shot, and he would add rim lights to the behind the, so like the chairs were like he would add rim lights behind certain pieces of furniture, basically, uh like area lights, for example, that will serve as rim lights but aren't seen in the render. So I mean, you wouldn't get that strong a rim light from any light source,
Mm-hmm.
but he did it anyway, and it really just made those pieces pop. And yeah, that's definitely a stylistic move, and
Yeah.
I would say even a bold move. Like, is that something
And
that you guys normally do?
it's
Like
kind
you
of a
really
thing.
go to that level, like, or do you try to keep things as physically accurate? Is it even important, like, to do that?
It's like studio lighting of
Like
some product shot or
Of
something like that.
like do
yeah,
you
but
have to pay
I
attention
think
to the physical accuracy of the lighting
yeah, but
of the environment you're visualizing, or can
uh,
you go
I think
crazy with
I think
additional
you should be careful with that, but definitely this kind of like a photorealism or physically correct approach is a bit of a trap, sort of, in thinking. So because you could take a super photorealistic. I just love the quote from Ian Hubert's Blender conference talk that he said. This is a photo in 3D app. Photos are photorealistic because they are photos. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can take a photo that looks totally crap, but
Yeah.
it's physically correct. Because
Yeah.
reality, physically correct reality can sometimes be boring, and what we are
Yeah.
really creating in archviz is a striking image. So you are using the tools, and you're kind of fooling the eye. It's a little bit of an art of illusion. You're fooling the eye that it's realistic, but what you really want to do is make a
larger than
nice
life.
yeah,
Yeah.
better than reality looking image, sort of.
Yeah.
So that's this kind of trick fits into this mood, and photographers, interior photographers, also do these kind of tricks. Using some reflective, some additional lighting, or this piece of reflective material or stuff like that. Different
Oh
tools
yeah.
for photography. That
That's
like model photography, in you could photograph a model just like in the lighting that's on the set, or you can use additional tools to make the model look, I don't know, add additional lighting to the shadow areas or other stuff like that. And yeah,
By the way, I remember
that's an artistic choice. What I wanted to say, it's an artistic choice.
I talked with a guy who's also a cinematographer, and he said at some point he had problem because in movies, when he would light the shot, that place, he's supposed to come up with interesting lighting and interesting mood. And there was a shot which was inside of some kind of carriage, like from 19th century, and there was a problem. Okay, so we need to light faces of people talking inside, but where is this light coming from, right? There is no light bulb inside of this. This is 19th century. And so they just studied some pictures, and those carriages sometimes had a lantern outside hanging. So he said, okay, so we are putting a lantern there, and this is enough of an excuse to light people inside in any way we want. I mean, we are not really lighting them with the lantern. We have our set of lights and we are going to play around with them. But for a viewer, this is light coming from this lantern. So also in archviz, you can, so for example, in archviz, you have that all part of interior, which is behind the camera, behind your back. Nobody knows what's there. So you can say, okay, let's say there is a window here, or let's say there is another lamp here, and
or
you
a
can
spaceship.
or a spaceship. Yeah, but you can at the same time add additional lighting to create some more interesting mood, and still keep for the viewer, keep it as this is a, at some level, somebody can say, okay, something doesn't add up in this image. There's something strange. So you can use those parts which are not visible, and assume that there's anything you need there. So yeah, that was. I mean, maybe we are now not talking about the style, about the lighting, but I just
No, that's
that
okay.
popped in my mind.
I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. I think for people who are like anyone listening, maybe who's starting out, that might be something good to know. Like I'm sure, like I know I would have really appreciated that, like that fact. Yeah, like in kind of being braver about stylizing, like adding extra lights that aren't visible in the, that might not even, you know what I mean? Like just being a little bolder with your lighting choices. That's a really good thing to
I don't think you really have to like follow the reality like 100%.
Yeah,
You also
yeah.
kind of creative with lighting and composition and compositing lighting with the shot. That's
True,
somehow
yeah.
like
It's a bit of a question of mood also, of the thing that you are doing. Just imagine yourself. You have to remember also that people, watching reality, we are also watching it with our eyes, which is also a kind of a lens to reality. So what is really going on with the lighting is also filtered by how you are perceiving it. So your eye kind of fools you. It also adapts to the lighting. So for example, in the evening you see a little bit differently than in the full daylight. Or
yeah.
it's like reality is a little bit it's not like 0 and
Skewed.
1. It's just
Yeah.
it's just analog spectrum of different shades and moods and all kinds
Yeah.
of situations. So so it's really a lot of space to to create.
That's true. That's true. That might be an interesting next topic. Yeah. So what is reality? And you can come
And
from
is
like
reality real?
yeah,
You know,
realism on one end.
Well,
On the
what
other
is
end,
real?
I've seen a kind of an archviz render with Unreal Engine, and it was there were two photos. Like one is this is real and this is Unreal. So there was a photo of real and something done with the
Nice.
Unreal Engine.
Oh, that's cool. That's clever. Yeah, that's okay. So, uh, wow. Yeah. I think this is a pretty loaded topic, and I think we covered only a few points, but then I think these like we covered these points were covered very holistically. So that's really great. But so what do you? I don't know. Like, what do you guys feel about uh sort of because okay, so I think we've established that style style will exist so long as you exist as a creator. I guess you will always have your own preferences and you can refine them through like the people you study but in the end like we all make different choices at one point or another. So like style will always be there, or style meaning sort of your individuality maybe. But uh another question is, if you're trying to sort of break into the industry, um like I don't know if you have you noticed that, and this might kind of be an unfair assumption to make, so just take this with a grain of salt, but have you noticed that there have been like recurring styles, for example, in for example character art, like uh like there are certain styles that seem to be very marketable or like industry friendly, um sort of like, do you have you noticed how sort of the Pixar look
Mhm.
has become an entire genre in itself. Like there are people who will make sort of characters that have uh that sort of borrow heavily from that look, mm, like an art station or whatever. So like, is this do you think that this is something, do you think that people there like people actively okay, so like a twofold question. One is, do you think that people some people tend to kind of copy heavily from a style that they think is um very marketable, like it's a style that people look for, they get a lot of jobs incorporating this style, and then the second question is, do you think they should? And then maybe the third question would be, does that even happen in do you see that happening in artviz?
Mhm. I think it does happen, and I think it's sort of natural. Uh, if you take a look at the art history in general, it was always happening. Sort of, people are watching other artists and getting inspired. Like all of the Renaissance painting, like it started in Italy somewhere, by discovering the ancient art once again, and then the northern artists that were traveling to Italy at that time, they were heavily inspired by that, and they kind of adopted some elements of that, but in their own way. So it's the other half of the question, like, should that happen? It's more rather. I think it should be answered rather not should that happen, but how should that happen? So you definitely should, or you can't really lock yourself out of the world, and well, perhaps technically you
Yeah,
can, but I don't know if it's the best
yeah,
thing
yeah.
you can do.
That's true. That's true.
But then again, you should. Yeah, I think you should. It was somewhere. I don't know if it was a book title, like still as an artist, or somewhere. You know, I've heard this motto.
Yeah, like that expression. Yeah,
Still like an artist. Yeah.
be like an artist.
Yeah, so you have to borrow things from, because that's
Yeah,
how
'cause-
we learn reality. We really observe it, and we kind of learn behaviors of other people, and try to mimic that in a way. But then you get some kind of an individual expression inside this, and if you let that guide you, sort of, I think you're okay. Yeah, unless you're not trying to just not be yourself in it. So,
yeah, I think it's a matter of whether you copy or whether you inspire yourself with something. 'Cause if you inspire yourself and then you like add something to someone's style, I think that's like doing this one step further for style and art in general. But then I think it's not about like copying someone's style. I think it should always count somehow as like an influence to your own style, and then, like developing your own style based on your inspirations.
Yeah.
I saw that video somewhere on YouTube. It was about inspiration, and one of the guys said, when you are stealing from one artist, you are in trouble. You're a copycat. But when you are stealing from 15, nobody cares. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good.
It's true. I think it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a cool way of putting it. I mean, because then how would anybody even know? But yeah.
And then you have when stealing from 15 artists, you're getting to a problematic place, because what part of each artist you are going to apply, and then this comes down to your own artistic choices. Yeah, so
yeah,
there's the place for your creativity and all of other stuff. That's I think that also comes down to what we were suggesting, that it's good to be kind of like open to other genres of art or other areas of life, to have some kind of a distance, and not just like focus only on archviz, because archviz is about architecture, and architecture is about life. So there are so many walks of life,
that's true.
aspects of life. So the more kind of like you're interested in life in general, the more you can apply to your art.
So true. Yeah, don't over obsess. Take some time to make a sandwich every once in a while.
Yeah.
That's the other half of
to go
bread
full
that is
circle with that.
Yeah.
The
closing part of bread, and you're switching.
Yeah, and the thread. No. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's about all we have time for this episode. But I think this is a really loaded topic, and it would be nice to kind of go back to it sometime later. So I think now we can end it, maybe with like, I don't know, can you guys name two or three artists that you guys like personally admire and like follow a lot? Any medium, by the way, like it could be photographers or painters or fellow CG artists, comic artists.
For me, it would be David Lynch. Yeah, from his visual and imaginary.
Yeah.
I need to think a moment.
You ever watch Jodorowsky? You ever watch like Jodorowsky films?
Jodorowsky?
Yeah.
I've okay, I will check.
Yeah. Check out the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary. I think it'll be anyway, sorry. Okay, so let's continue with the
our role models, sort of. For archviz, definitely one of my role models, like hero artists that I was always keeping an eye on was Bertrand Benoit. So that was for interiors mostly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm keeping an
yeah.
eye on the modern pieces of art, and in the other areas, I personally like Coen Brothers movies, sort of both both the comedy part and also the visuals. They keep quite nice visuals in there, and also I really like, especially visually, movies of Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting
Mhm.
approach and a very recognizable style of
Yeah, I think he's the one you can call like someone that has a style. Like you see it and you like recognize the style.
recognize
Like
the director, and I also have been following one of Polish comic artists lately. It is Tadeusz Baranowski. He's a kind of a legend of Polish comic drawings, and lately have been digging into that.
Mm. Okay. And you, Tom?
well, I remember I had this. I mean, when it comes to like CG artists, I think one of like the ones I follow the most, like one of the most like influential, I think would be Jakub Czech. He's like this great CG artist that's kind of following this kind of photographic style in CG and in archviz. I don't know, so I just can't remember the name. It was like this artist that did this really impressive video, like kind of something between archviz, CG, and cinematography and animation. I
Oh,
just
wow.
can't recall the name. Yeah, it was really like hyped to it like a few years ago, because it was in the times when like CG was not really that developed, like all the rendering engines were not really like that good like right now. But I just can't recall the name.
Do you mean that movie, The 10th and the 7th, something like that? This movie, architectural animation. There was a guy who did it.
Yeah, there was like this animation of like this had a lot of shots. I just oh my god, just can't recall the name.
So I can add. I like. There's a guy, Polish guy, Kamil Podwojewski. He had a nickname Simon HC on some forums. So I would say this guy has a very characteristic style, and I liked it a lot. I mean, it was it's like a little bit over colored and like aggressive post production, but I really at some point had enough of watching those elegant white minimal interiors, so like photographically perfect, and I liked his style a lot. So when it comes to also Marek Denko, this guy is from Czech Republic, I think, but this guy's I mean, he's out there like for a very long time. So he's a fantastic artist. You can check in Google.
Oh,
You
wow.
probably saw
Yeah,
a lot of his stuff. Yeah, I mean,
looking
yeah,
at
if you're interested in CG, you saw his works for sure. Yeah.
You know, okay, like not so uh before maybe we can, this is officially like the end of the recording, but or this is the end of the podcast, but I think little pro tip for our listeners and for me, honestly, like how do you get that? Is it normal practice to apply like textures maybe during the compositing phase to give it like a, I don't know, like grain or something like that, to give it sort of a more photographic look, or or not? Like, is that because sometimes like
But
there's some renders, you know how like they're just so gritty, but it doesn't seem like the grit is coming from like in the local textures of the object. It's like just globally there's this unifying texture. Is that is that a thing, or maybe I'm just like
well,
seeing
I
I
it
think you
think
weird?
can
I
add
think
a
I
lot of
know what you're
post
talking about.
production. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause you can also add a lot of add all those traditional photographic things that will appear on photographic film, like I don't know, like chromatic aberration on the edges. For example, some people add those in
Mm,
archviz, like to make it kind of look like a photo, even though like
right.
it's not a
Photo real. Yeah.
photo real,
Yeah.
as if it was made by a camera. But
Yeah. As if it was a, like a real photo. But
yeah, but it was made with a digital camera, like all 3D.
Yeah.
mhm.
So I don't know,
Basically,
feeling reality, I think.
in 3D, we are in post-production, we are trying to do all of that stuff which guys who post-product photos are want to get rid of, basically.
Yeah,
So
it's like
I
all these imperfections
Ain't
yeah
that a
nobody
funny
wants to
life?
have on photos, but you want to have it
Yeah.
in like 3D
uh,
shot.
yeah, at some point I gave lessons to a woman who she was a post-production artist for studio photos of furniture and interiors, and he had like fantastic skills, and she wanted to learn archivist because that field of photography was diminishing slowly because of the archivist. So at some point I showed her some stuff of post-production, some simple tricks. And he said, yes, she said exactly, okay, so I think I don't have to learn it because basically what you're showing to me, it's what I, for last 10 years, I was trying to get rid in photographies. So I would just do it the other way. And I think I'm good. Yeah. Like
Man.
vignettes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. Sounds like a hold my beer moment.
Sounds like what?
Like a
Sorry.
hold my beer moment. Like, okay, so
Oh
you
yeah,
finally learned how to, but can
yeah.
you post produce to make it look more realistic? Hold my beer. And
I can post. I can make it more than less than the more again. That's my
yeah.
skill.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, wow. Well, thanks guys. It was a really cool talk. So
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
till the next one.
Thank you guys.
Okay,
Thanks, guy.
See ya.
thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye.
See you next
And
time.
bon
Yeah.
appetit.
Yeah,
Bon
bon appetit.
appetit.
You can finally finish that sandwich.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.